So, very nice for me to be here, and I want to look a little bit at the notion of mindfulness generally, and then relate it to aspects of Buddhist meditation. So, small children tend, hopefully, to be carefree. This, of course, leads them to be careless as well, which means that they don't pay attention to what's going on. So one of the great duties of any mother is to say to the child, watch out, take care, haven't I told you? This is basic instruction in mindfulness. Look where you're going. So why is the child not looking where they're going? Because they've been caught by an idea. And the thing about ideas is that they decontextualize us. So the child might be in the park playing with the ball and the mum's taking them home. And if the child drops the ball, they want to run after it. But now they're on the road, and cars are there. The child has a focus of attention on the ball. And implicit in that is the decontextualizing forgetfulness of the lived context. So then the adult has to shout to the child, "Oi, what are you doing?" To wake them up from the dream of fixation. Now, generally speaking, all forms of neurosis are dreams of fixation, whether it's depression or anxiety, obsessive turns, or so-called personality disorders. These are all ways of being caught up in something. One can get lost in memories, worries about one's appearance, worries about what other people think of us. That is to say that the phenomenological field, the immediacy of the presenting of experience, is being mediated through a veil of habitual thought. As if we were wearing dark glasses, we don't see very clearly. And if you get used to wearing these dark glasses, you think that that coloration is actually how things are. If someone develops agoraphobia, for example, they become convinced that if they leave their dwelling place, their house, something awful will happen. They can see out of the window other people walking about. This doesn't interrupt their own conviction that something dreadful will happen to them if they go out. So, from this point of view, you could say that that kind of neurotic turn is a state of distraction, believing that the arising of anxiety, changes in breathing, skin tension, and so on, is a true sign of actual danger, comes to be an absolute truth. And looking down the line of that established belief, there is an automatic distraction from any evidence which would put it into question. That is to say, I trust my experience, but my experience is governed from a position of extreme individualization. Because the people walking out on the street have 2 arms and 2 legs. I, sitting in my flat, looking out the window, have 2 arms and 2 legs. But if I was to walk over to the front door and open it up, my legs would collapse, because I have different kinds of legs. Other people have wonderful legs, but mine are wobbly, rubbery legs. And because I know this to be a fact, your invitation to help me across the threshold is a punishment. This is the nature of the world that most of us live in. Maybe not with such extreme examples, but the open field of life is closed to us by our own presuppositions. We are imprisoned within our thought constructions. So in the modern usage of mindfulness, which started, it's a small research project in America with John Kabat-Zinn, the idea is to allow people to be more aware of the actual status of the beliefs which are arising. The first thing that we realize once we start to calm our mind through giving focused attention is that thoughts are always moving. That is to say, we see that there is a kind of tension or contradiction between the messenger and the message. The thought arises, I can't. This passes very quickly. So the lived phenomenology of the arising of the thought is that it is a transient phenomena, which has no power to remain in the mind, and we also have no power to keep it in our mind. I told you before, I can't. Why don't you understand? I can't. Well, there's a few sentences strung together, and it took about 20 seconds to say them. So the semantic structure, whether it's presented as a thought in our head or as words coming out of our mouth, is, of its very nature, transient. What it establishes is a feeling tone. This sort of feeling tone is like morning mist in a valley. You can walk through the mist. It lacks substance. But if you look at the mist, it seems to block your way. That is to say, it's the quality of interpretation that I bring to my thoughts which blinds me to their evanescence. So, by becoming more attentive to the actuality of the thought, if one really looks clearly, one can start to see that the walls of my prison are not made of stone. They're made of clouds, of dreams. The power that the thought has to captivate, to catch me, is the power that I have to allow myself to be captivated by them. Most people get anxious thoughts from time to time. What makes this a clinical issue or not is how much credence, how much belief in that thought one has, how seriously we take them to be. In the summertime, it's very nice to lie outside in a field and look at the clouds going by. You can see an elephant, you can see a train, you can see all sorts of things passing across the sky. There is an experience, but it doesn't linger. The thoughts in the mind are very similar. But once you believe in something, it takes on a truth. It's not the truth of the object, it's the truth of the subject. If we get a lot of immigrants in our country, it will destroy our culture. If we get a lot of immigrants in our country, it will enrich our culture because I'm tired of the same old stupid stories. We can see that these different views can energize people very strongly. The wars in the Middle East are wars of ideas. Human culture is the play of ideas. So the management of ideas is very important. If we have no thoughts, no ideas, we're going to be paralyzed. But if we believe our own ideas very strongly, we're going to become stupid. So how do you maintain that position of dynamic inquiry, of not knowing in relation to mental phenomena? Because if we sit inside an identity which is constructed out of ideas, when we put that construction into question, we will increase our anxiety. So in Britain, there's always a big discussion about whether we should be in Europe or not be in Europe. Gaining, losing, and this is very helpful for thinking about identity. Identity is like a cuckoo. It puts its eggs in someone else's nest. It's a squatter. That is to say, whatever we take ourselves to be is a transient formation. This is why in my work as a therapist, I have seen some patients for 10 years and more. If they could just tell me their story once and we sorted it out, that would be very easy. But there's always more to say. Now, why is this? It's not that there is a huge bag of history and they only have a small spoon and each week they give me some little mountain of this history. But rather they, like us, are talking themselves into existence. Language is the particular sea that we all swim in. Our sense of ourselves is inseparable from the thoughts that we have internally and the words that come out of us in relation to ourselves. The way other people speak to us can make us feel happy and relaxed or anxious and uptight. That is to say, we are labile, we move very quickly. The self, our sense of self, who we are, is not a fixed thing. It's always a work in progress. existence is dynamic. We know this on one level. We are full of potential. The world around us is full of potential, and relating these two together means that we don't quite know what's happening. Neurosis is an answer to this existential uncertainty, because it gives you something continuing to say about yourself. I'm depressed. I am depressed. I just am. So I can sit in that bubble, and it acts as a protective against the world. In that sense, neurosis is a prophylaxis. Yeah. So it's like a condom. The basic purpose of condoms is to stop babies, and also to stop the transmission of certain diseases. It is a barrier method. So when we get caught up in a neurosis, we are preoccupied. We have a kind of buffer zone around us, which muffles the impact of the invitations of the evolving world. Because if we allow the world to be fresh, and ourselves to be fresh, we have to find a way of moving with circumstances. And the problem here is the fantasy of agency, the capacity to make things happen, to be the one who does things. In Tibetan is chepapo. And when we look around the room, we see other people. They look pretty sorted. They look as if they don't have too many problems. But when we look in ourselves, it's not like that. They know what to do. But we have to pretend. So this is the persecutory fantasy that pervades our world. That we imagine we should know what to do. Now clearly Mr. Putin is better at that theater than Mr. Obama. It is a liberal democratic opinion of uncertainty, but curiosity is not very helpful in a time of war. Because Mr. Putin says President Assad is the president. He is the president of Syria, and the president is the president. Once you start stabilizing the president, the whole edifice will fall down. Like an arch which has a keystone put in the middle, and it locks all the stones. Our mind is also operating in this way. That we have certain governing beliefs, such as I exist, and perhaps I am a good person or I am a bad person. And these core beliefs sit on the seat of power. So maintaining this edifice seems very attractive. So very often we choose to live in a state of false consciousness, of a lie which is familiar, rather than step out into an unknown exploration. So a function of mindfulness practice is to allow a site of inquiry which is non-conceptual. That is, one's home base, instead of being a construct of thoughts and memories and intentions, becomes rather the clarity of focused attention. So that no matter what I'm looking at, because I'm allowing myself more separation and perspective from it, the actual configuration of what is being revealed through my attention is no longer destabilizing my sense of self. And in mental health areas, this can help the patient or person to start to see themselves more clearly. That is to say, they start to see, I have been operating on the basis of identification with patterns. So, for example, some people have a mood of disappointment in life. In being disappointed, there's a sense of hopelessness. And this assumption gets in the way of clearly seeing how other people are. If you study psychology, you learn a little bit about diagnosis. You get big books, very thick books, many different factors for identifying what's wrong with someone. But certainly in Britain, the divorce rate for psychologists and psychiatrists is larger than for the general population. So you might be good at diagnosing your patient's condition, but you haven't a clue who you're going out on a date with. It's quite difficult for us to get a real sense of other people. We tend to start with like or not like. I like you because, well, I just like you. And I'll go on liking you until I don't like you. This is not very sophisticated. That is to say, there is a kind of blindness. The slippage into assumptive relating happens very quickly. The word for mindfulness in Pali and the Sanskrit-derived language is sati. Essentially, it indicates recollection. It's translated into Tibetan as dramba, which means memory, recollection, kind of attentiveness. As memory, this kind of mindfulness operates to give the clarity of locating ourselves within the assumptive field. At work, you remember the different personalities of your colleagues and so on, and so you relate to them in different ways. In psychoanalytic language, the object relation or the image that you have constructed in your mind about that person is called to mind and then acts as the template for how you relate to them. Now, the problem with that is my confidence in knowing how to relate to you is dependent on you not changing. So if I know who you are, you had better continue to be the person that I know who you are. But you guys are very unreliable. So I feel disappointed, let down. This outer form of recollection is not very helpful. Linked with the way mindfulness is taken up in psychotherapy and education now, it's related more to recollecting that I'm here in this context, and therefore I have to be in relation with you. Because how you are allows me to form myself in relation to you. So the less mediation, the better. Now we have a lectern there, so I could have come with a sheaf of notes and read out something to you, and I would just be looking at my piece of paper. What would be the point of that? But I don't have a piece of paper, so what am I going to say? I don't know. But I look at your lovely faces, and something comes out of my mouth. A miracle. Because this is the human condition. When we relax, we find ourselves as part of the unfolding field itself. And what is required is elicited from us by the movement of the field. It's a bit like when you're learning to swim. At first you're crashing around, and then you learn, oh, the water is actually your friend. If you're friendly towards the water, if you caress it gently, then it will want you. So in that way, we can feel the basic goodwill that's present in all people. And this creates an ambience, a mood within which there is the free flow of interactive energy. The word recollection in English is very nice because it has the idea that again and again you have to collect all of yourself together. Because we tend to fragment ourselves. We lose bits of ourselves all the time through our selective attention. So while you're sitting here, maybe the seat's a bit hard, so you become aware of your bum, but you forget about your feet. Then when it's time to go, suddenly you have feet again. That is to say, the integrity of our body a lot of the time is simply abstract. That our lived experience of the body is that it's fragmentary. According to situation and stimuli, different parts of us awaken or recede. And this is the same with our mental body, our mental structures. Bits fall away, bits come into focus. Most of us is latent. And due to causes and circumstances, it may come into manifestation. The famous example for this is Proust and the smell of the Madeleine, the small sponge cake, which brought back a train of memories from his childhood, leading him to write a very, very, very long novel. Now, another way of looking at this is to see we are a flow of experience unfolding in time. The general way of construing this is to say that I am the experiencer and you are what I experience. Out of my sense organs, I get information about that which is other. But I'm here talking with you, and I see your faces and shapes, and I also see my hands moving around. I'm also aware of the sound of my voice. That is to say that I experience myself, and I experience you, and this is a unified field of experience. That is to say, my embodied being is within the field of experience. I'm not the subject looking at objects, and I certainly can't have objective knowledge about you. But moment by moment, how I am revealed to myself and how you are revealed to me is shifting and changing. And yet, this is being revealed. This is being momentarily registered. There is a showing. Everything is showing. Who is it shown to? Each of us. Do we see what is shown? If we have an astigmatism, if we have some disorder in our eye, then we get a twisted or perverted vision of what is going on. So what is here? In the Western modern phenomenological tradition, going from Edmund Husserl to Maurice Merleau-Ponty and so on, there was a huge effort to try to simplify that which was being attended to by peeling away the elaborated conceptual constructs. But in the end, that project doesn't go very far, because it's a kind of homeopathic dosage. You're using the poison to fight the poison. And the concept, like concepts, you want to make more concepts. So trying to think your way out of thought is an impossible task. Yet here we are with the clarity of the immediacy of being in this situation. As we turn our heads, we see the various infinite vistas of the room unfolding before us. In that sense, our mind is operating like a mirror. There is a showing which is prior to interpretation. This operates always continuously and prior to the selective attention out of which we construct the supports for our own fetishistic indulgence. So, in the Dzogchen tradition of Tibetan Buddhism, mindfulness means to be mindful of the given or unborn or immediate clarity of the mind before thought. Now, a mirror is not defined by the quality of reflection in it. Mirrors offer an infinite hospitality. They're always available. You have a mirror on the side of your car and you drive 100 kilometers. Think how many hundreds of thousands of images have arisen and passed in that mirror. You get stuck in a traffic jam, you start to get a little bit agitated. The mirror is just showing cars parked. The mirror shows what's there. Selective attention, by its very nature, is making certain aspects of the field into the figure and receding the other aspects in order to maintain the unfolding topology of our own sense of ourself and the world. Now, these two aspects are not in contradiction. The selective attention is revealed to us because of the clarity of the mind itself. So, the practice of mindfulness from the point of view of Dzogchen is, first of all, to start to be mindful. Who is the one who is looking? Who is the one who is talking, sleeping, eating, and so on? Clearly, for each of us, we answer, I am. So what is this I? The I refers to two aspects. It refers to the nexus of self-identification. So each of us could tell many, many stories about ourselves. That's the kind of narrative, discursive sense of the ego self. But I also means just the one who's looking. And in that looking and seeing, listening and hearing, if it's not going to be a selective attention, then it becomes very open. Generally speaking, we can say that the structure of the ego is phallic. Phallic, like the phallus, the symbol of the penis. The penises, especially when they're erect, want to do something. No. So the ego is like that. The ego is always busy trying to do something. And so we see that our mind is engaged in all sorts of tasks, politically, economically, socially, in the family, and in all kinds of contexts. That is to say, it exists in a state of arousal. In the Tibetan language, one of the words that's used to describe sentient beings, living creatures, is droa, which means both a noun, the goer, and a verb, to be going. And right from the moment of conception, the fetus is developing with incredible changes, which we can now watch on scans. And then the baby is born, and just years and years and years of movement. Happy, sad, drinking, pissing, sleeping, waking. That is to say, we are energetic unfoldment, which is often hidden from us by the very reificatory, the very over-definitive language which we use. Aspects of our lives seem to be repetitive, and through that repetition, we construct the notion of stability, like, oh, I'm going back into my place of work. But that is an interpretation based on certain cognitions. You come into work and you say, oh, it's a lovely day today. Two things. I'm in work, familiar place, and it's a lovely day. But at this time of the year, if you have a clear sky, the sun has gone down in its angle, and the illumination of the office you work in will be different from 2 months ago. That is to say, the sensory domain which you are inhabiting, this room, is not the same as yesterday. Only through our selective attention do we maintain the fantasy it's the same. This is the very opposite of mindfulness. When we're attentive or mindful to the field of phenomena as they show themselves, we find it's always fresh. So our ego consciousness wants to move towards this unfolding domain and mark it out in terms of its existing body of knowledge. And this is how we create more of the same. Whether it's neurotic or reasonably successful, it has a dualistic structure in which we project what we know and then are reassured to know that things are as we know them to be. But if we go into the office and we're just quiet for a couple of minutes and we receive the room as it is today, there is space for the room to show itself. And then on the basis of how the room is, we can move within it. Which has to do with time and place. Where am I should influence how I am. Most of us don't wear sandals in the snow. So on that level, we have some sense of what's going on. But in group therapy, it's very common, certainly in the early months, for people to have no sense of space and time. Some patients talk too much, talk for too long, and they say very inappropriate things. And others can't find their voice at all. Because the group hasn't yet formed, so what is there? But the idea that 8 strangers could sit in a circle and look at each other and just see, that's very anxiety-provoking. So either too much or too little. But of course, until we know what's there, how shall we speak? because telling you about me from inside me is not very helpful. How we are together creates a permission to speak in particular ways. So the perception of what is there allows activity to move without anxiety. If we don't know what's there, and we're not able to look and see what is there, we're just imagining. And even if we think we're communicating, it's essentially a monologue. So in this particular school or aspect of Buddhism called Dzogchen, the focus of attention is on the mind as, in the first instant, passive receptive. The mirror receives. The reflection is the sign that it has received. Learning to receive without anxious defensiveness or appropriation can be quite difficult. So the principal meditation instruction is, with whatever is arising, don't merge into it and don't keep it at a distance. So in the very often the used image of the mirror offers a very intimate hospitality to what it's reflecting. It's not keeping the image at a distance. The mirror is open and empty enough to show the reflection as if it was itself. You will never actually see a mirror as mirror. The mirror shows itself by showing what is not it, but as if what is not it is it, and it both is and isn't.
Thank you. Wow.
So,
mindfulness lacking here.
Well, it's complicated. So the mirror is showing itself, not as itself, but as what it is not. And yet, this what it is not is it as well. Because it is what is occupying the space. In the same way, our mind is open and empty. The clarity of the mind is not a thing, it's not a construct built up by exercises or experience or learning from books. It is the revealer, it is the showing function. And what is shown is the inseparability of what we take to be inside and outside. So we're sitting here together, and we have thoughts and feelings, there are sensations in the body and so on, and there are colors and shapes and noises outside. These aspects show themselves simultaneously. Sometimes the tilt of our attention is outside, sometimes the tilt is inside, but essentially it's going on at the same time. And how we are, if we are connected with other people, is part of what is going on. It's our mode of participation. How I'm talking just now is not how I always talk. If I felt the need to talk like this on the aeroplane and I stood up and started to unfold this holy truth, I would be in trouble. That is to say, these words are evoked by the circumstance, by the context. And this is true all the time for us. In Buddhism, they call this dependent arising, Chicit Samutpada, which means on the basis of this, that arises. Because I've studied different kinds of things, different ideas arise in my mind and come out of my mouth. But not by themselves, but evoked by the context. There is a co-creation. That is to say, we talk of the individual, which means the indivisible one, the one that can't be chopped up. I, me, myself. And yet, everything about us is co-emergent. Yeah, emerging together. We didn't make the clothes we wear. Most of us don't grow the food we eat. So on a very outer level, how we feed and clothe ourselves, the bed that we sleep in is a relationship with someone we don't even know. More directly, when we are not interrupted by a fixation, we respond. For example, Maybe you're going to meet a friend in a cafe and you have some good news you want to tell them. When you arrive, you see them sitting and you see something's wrong. Oh, what's the matter? Oh, my mother's been rushed to hospital. Now you can't tell your nice story. You're into something else. If you allow yourself to be in what is here. Neurosis, again, is the monologic muffling to that, with obsessions and things in the autistic spectrum and so on. The over-fixation on me having to say what I need to say obliterates the environment. So the level of mindfulness, which is about relaxing and opening and seeing that all the outer and inner phenomena are moving moment by moment, frees us from the delusion of being a thing in a world of things. And we awaken to this way in which we are moving like seaweed in the ocean, pulsating with the rhythms which are all around us. And this is wonderful, because it keeps us very fresh and moving. Life is then not boring or stale, because nothing is ever the same. In that sense, we become time. We live precisely here in the unfolding moment, not time as some kind of road or pathway that we move up and down at different speeds to try to coordinate all the aspects of our diary. But paradoxically, because we are more relaxed and open, and because we are in time as time, there is always time, and so ordinary activities get done. So we've covered three aspects of mindfulness. There's the outer general mindfulness, which is paying attention to what's happening around us, the environment. Then there's the psychologically informed mindfulness, which is attending to the patterning of thoughts and feelings as potential invitations, but without demand. That is to say, in being mindful that the thought is a thought, the power of the thought to catch us is diminished. The thought is a potential resource. If you have a bottle of whiskey in your house, you don't need to drink it in one evening. If you look at the bottle's not going to say drink me. But if you have the ear of an alcoholic, then you will hear that special message. And we know that's true. Sometimes you go into the kitchen and you start to eat some cake, you think, why am I eating this? It's as if the cake showed us the necessity of consumption. So the general structure of all neurotic personality disorders is that the object formation or the patterning of thought, feeling and sensation appears to be a side of agency, or the one that's doing the thing. So the primary fruit of mindfulness in this arena is to increase the perception of options so that you can make better choices. It increases your sense that there are many options, and it strengthens your capacity to make a good choice. So this is why mindfulness in schools is quite useful. I don't know in Estonia, but in England, in the exams at the end of the year in schools, many students don't do well because they don't read the question. They become anxious and they think they've understood and they write the thing that they want to write, but it's not actually what's asked. Right? And of course this happens in classrooms as well in terms of distraction and poor timing and not getting essays handed in on time and so on. Because if you have homework to do, it's always easiest if you just sit and do it. But some children merge into the idea of homework. Think, I have to do my homework, oh my God, I don't want to do my homework. And the whole evening goes by and they don't do the homework. But they're not free to do anything else because they're just permeated by homework. Or they just leave the piece of paper in the school bag till the next morning. So this relates to the two basic problems in meditation we looked at earlier, merging into the object or keeping it at a distance. But without either resistance or excessive arousal, if you just sit and do the homework, then it's done. It is what it is, and when you give yourself to it, it's done. But I don't want to. and I can't. And it's not fair. You, my dad, don't have to do homework, but I have to do homework, so I'm not doing it unless you do something. And this is when children are extremely annoying, because they take up a position in relation to life. It's very familiar around bedtime and cleaning teeth and so on. I don't want to. Sweetheart, we have to do lots of things we don't want to, you just do it. But you can see there that this is the problem of not inhabiting one's life as it is. I am me, and there is this thing, and you want to stick this thing onto me. But if I do that, I won't be me. And in that you can see the basis of a lot of resistance, particularly children who have a fragile sense of self become very angry and strong at that point. Because it's not just the issue of the task, it's the basic definition of self. So some degree of mindfulness, being able to sit with that feeling as it arises, and to recognize a thought is a thought, a feeling is a feeling. It's transient, and its semantic content has to be considered. It can't just be accepted as the truth. And in that way, we start to see that the energy of the thought, the feeling, and even the sensation is the energy of our own mind. We invest the thought with energy. In Freudian language, there's a libidinal cathexis. Our life energy starts to appear in the form of the thought. But this is not true. So mindfulness is a great door to freedom of recognizing that the thought is simply a neutral resource, and its validity is contextual. I'm going to school tomorrow, I have to hand in the homework. I want it to be done by tomorrow, the implication of which is I have to do it now. And I want to do it now because I don't want it to be requiring doing very early in the morning. So children are having to work out how to take the demand of the world or the demand of the super-ego and bring it into alignment with their own ego desire. So that necessity and demand become desire and volition. And mindfulness can help with that process a lot, because you will start to see these are just positions. They're like games. Children, if they're playing together, they are always engaged in role play. And they go into the role of the teacher or the parent or the doctor or the baby, and they can really show how that is. So mindfulness here is helpful in recognizing I am pluralistic, I am multiple. Although it feels as if it is the case, our self is not a fixed, definable entity. It exists as a potential which can reveal itself in many different ways. And so enrolling and derolling is the pulse of life. Now you might say to a child, listen, tomorrow your grandmother is coming for lunch, and there are some words that we let you say in this house, but you don't say it in front of Granny. This is very helpful. The child is learning the contextual presentation of self. And this is the heart of applied mindfulness. Start with the experiential self, not with yourself. And then you find your way to participate. And then thirdly, we were looking at the Dzogchen notion of mindfulness, that it implies being mindful of the deep openness, which is the root of our potential to arise in many different forms. And that three domains or facets are operating simultaneously here. Our most basic nature, which is open and empty. Secondly, the luminous radiance of that openness, which, like a mirror, has the potential to show many different forms. And thirdly, the unique specificity of each moment of our existence. Nothing is ever repeated. Our time together is almost gone. This is our life. The color in the leaves is beginning to change. So where are we? If we're not here and now, where are we? So mindfulness is the movement of again and again returning to open presence in the moment and allowing our full, easy participation with whatever is occurring. The end. You'll be glad to know. I think that's enough for one short talk. I hope it's useful in some way, gives you some idea of what this area is about. And if you're interested, I have a website where there are many talks and transcripts in this area. So thank you very much for coming and attending so easily.